Good afternoon, students. Welcome to the lecture of Real Analysis 1. In the last lecture, we have studied some important concept of multivariable differential calculus, that is mean value theorem actually. Before that, we have seen what is the nature of the derivatives if the types of functions are different. That is, function of R to R type, it gives us the derivative as scalar. Function of Rn to R type, it gives us the derivative as a gradient vector. That of for function of Rm to Rn type, it gives us the derivative in the form of matrix. Okay. Later we have started to understand mean value theorem. Mean value theorem actually we want to find for the functions of multivariable multivalued functions. Before that, we have written what is the mean value theorem for the functions of one variable real value type, right? And this is what the geometrical interpretation also I have told you. Whenever you are going to understand any real analysis concept, you should understand its a geometrical interpretation. Then only it will be easier for you to understand the concept. Because with this statement only, what can you guess? You can't guess anything, no? But if I show you like this, that a dash z gives us the slope of the tangent at that point z, say fy minus fx upon y minus x gives us the slope of that line joining the 2 points x fx y fy. If I just show you like this, then the concepts will become more clear to you. Okay. Now we have checked out that whether the same mean value theorem is true for the functions of one variable vector valued. Here is an example I have taken function defined on the closed interval 0, 1, that is one variable, and the resultant is a element in three-dimensional space, that is codomain space is given to when R3, and we have checked out with the simple steps that whether the mean value theorem is true. Therefore, if I say mean value theorem is true, here we get this as a contradiction that cos 2 pi z is 0 and sin 2 pi z 0, and the fact is known to us both sine and cosine ratio cannot be 0 simultaneously because such as z do not exist. One more example I told you for to solve for homework. I hope you have done it. Later we have seen a notation or expression for the line joining the 2 points x and y in the given space. Okay, and what is the equation of line we have found? This is of the type px plus 1 minus t into y if t lies between 0 to 1. You may check it for t equals to 0. This gives you a point y. For t equals to 0, it gives you the point y, and for t equals to 1, it gives you the point x, and for all the values in between 0 to 1, it gives us the point on the line segment joining x and y. It doesn't mean that t cannot take a value outside 0 to 1. Yes, it can take the values outside 0 to 1. That is, if we go further to 1, that is 1.2 or something, then it gives us the equation, it gives us the point on the line segment extended, like this here, a pink line I have shown. Okay, and if t for negative, it is going to be on the line extended backward. Therefore, here we were considering the position of a line segment only. That's why the value of t is being restricted between 0 to 1. Later, the mean value theorem we have written for the functions of Rn to Rm type, and it was told us that the same kind of statement works only on both the sides. We have to take a dot product with a vector, arbitrary vector a in Rm. The proof of this mean value theorem we have seen in detail in the last lecture. I hope you have understood this. I think you have given the revision for this also. If you have a difficulty, you can ask me. Now also, I am ready to answer. Any difficulty for the students?
No, ma'am.
Good. Then we have moved towards the next concept of connectedness. Connectedness already was studied in your graduation level. The connectedness means that a subset of a metric space is connected if we cannot separate it. That is, if we cannot write it as the union of two non-empty sets. I have told you with an example. So we are going to use this important result regarding the connected sets. That is, every open connected set in Rn is polygonally connected. That is, for every pair of points in that set, those 2 points can be joined by the polygonal arc lying in the set. Though we are considering this theorem, but we are not going to understand. We are not going to see its proof. We will take this theorem without proof. Okay. Now let me go to for today's lecture number 39, in which we are going to check the result if the total derivative of the function at the given point is 0, whether the function is going to be constant or not, because this result holds for the functions of one variable. Now we are going to check it whether it holds for the functions of many variable or not. Let me write the statement. Let S be an open connected subset of Rn, open connected subset of Rn, and f be a function defined from S to Rm, be differentiable at each point of the domain. As each point of the domain, yes. Next, it is given if f dash of c is equals to 0 for each c in S. For each c in S, that is, derivative gives you 0 for every value or for every point in the domain, then prove that f is constant. F is constant on yes. We know the result is true for the one variable real value function. Now we were going to prove this for multivariable case, and to prove this we were going to use the mean value theorem which we have proved in the last lecture. Let us start with what are the given things. It is given that S is open connected subset. As this is given to be open connected, we can use the previous result we have discussed. That is, every open connected set is polygonally connected. That is, every pair of points in that set is connected through a polygonal arc. Let me write this given things. Since S is an open connected subset, comma, may I write it is polygonally connected by the previous theorem. When it is polygonally connected. What is the meaning of polygonally connected? Let me write, every pair of points can be joined to a polygonal arc. Therefore, is whether someone wants to say something? Hello, students? Check whose mic is unmuted. Please mute yourself.
जॉइन होता है इतने काही जॉइन होता है इतने
जॉइन होता येत नाही का एकच मिनिट.
हेलो मैम.
हा एक मिनिट.
हाँ.
वेळेवर जॉईन व्हायचं ना सगळ्यांनी. मग स्क्रीन शेअर केलं की अवघड होतं. मला आधीच सांगितलं. 2:45 झालेत. मी 2:30ला सांगितलं होतं लेक्चर. ओके, झाले का जॉईन सगळे? चालू करू? Where we were, here. As this domain is given to be an open connected subset, we have written this to be polygonally connected. Let me write the meaning of polygonally connected. Therefore, every pair of points x and y in S can be joined by a polynomial arc, that is a curve. Polynomial arc in yes. Okay, let me show you how. This is my open connected subset S of an n-dimensional space Rn, say. Okay, suppose these are the 2 points x and y I have taken. As the subset is open connected, it is polygonally connected. Therefore, there exists a polygonal arc, that is a path exists between x and y. Let me write the path. Let me draw the path like this. Is it okay? This is x, this is y. Now, as the 2 points were joined by a polygonal arc, what I'm going to do next is, let me mark some points on this polygonal arc. Let me start with assuming this x is equal to P1. Let me mark its neighboring point be P2, P3, so on. Let us mark the last point on this line segment to be PR is equal to y. P1 is equal to x and PR is equal to y, and these all points were lying on the polygonal arc joining x and y. Joining x and y. Now we will denote these points by the symbol. Let me write it. Denote the vertices of this arc. Denote the vertices of this arc by what we have used a symbol P1, P2 dot up to PR, where P1 is equal to x. The first point we have marked as x. That of the last point PR is equals to y. Now we while marking these points on the polygonal arc, we will take the points in such a way that the line segment joining the 2 points will be in the same set. Okay, let me show you how. If I am going to consider this 2 points, okay, now I want to join the 2 points, say P1, P2. The 2 points P1, P2 I have taken so near that whatever is the line, if I join between P2 to P3, this is going to almost resemble with the arc. And as this arc is lying in S, one can say that the line segment joining the 2 points is going to lie in the same set. Is this point clear to everyone? Selection of the points we will make in such a way that we can mark the 2 points so near to one another that the line segment joining the point is going to almost overlap with the curve or that arc. And if the arc is in S, may I say that the line segment is also belonging to the domain yes. Is this point clear? Here I write, since each line segment what is the symbol we have used? L we have used, L of xy, no? In last theorem itself we have seen this. So for line segment joining the 2 points Pi1 to Pi, say, may I say this is going to contain in S? Okay, what is the reason I can write here is, the points Pi selected are very close to one another. The curve joining 2 points, is in yes. It implies the straight line joining the same 2 points will be in the same set. The straight line joining 2 points is also in yes. Is this point clear to everyone? Because unless we find the line segment joining the 2 points is in the same set, we cannot use the mean value theorem, because this is an essential condition for the mean value theorem. Now we will use the mean value theorem. Therefore, here I'll write, by mean value theorem we have. What we will have? We will use the mean value theorem for the 2 points Pi plus 1 and Pi. Okay, what is the statement? Let me write the statement in red pen. This is a fy minus fx is equal to, yes, can anyone tell me? Right side?
A into f dash.
A into f dash of z into
y minus x.
Y minus x.
Y minus x. Good. This is the statement we have proved. Now we were going to use these mean value theorem for the 2 points pi plus 1 and pi. Therefore, let me put here f of pi plus 1 minus f of pi. Okay, and here we will say that there exists a point C, say. Therefore, right side I will write this is f dash of C into pi plus 1 minus pi. Is it okay? By mean value theorem, one can say there exists C on L of pi plus 1 to pi such that, what such that? This is the point C we have assumed, which is going to lie on the line segment joining the 2 points pi plus 1 and pi. But what is one more thing given in the statement itself? Derivative is 0, na? For all the points in the domain, f dash of C is given to be 0, and for this our aim is to prove that f is constant function. Therefore, what is the right side? A into 0. One of the vector is 0, therefore the resultant is also 0. Therefore, we get f of pi plus 1 minus f of pi is equal to 0. And what, for how many vectors this is true? This is for every vector A in Rm. Correct? No? This is true for every vector A in Rm. Now, as this statement is true for every vector A in Rm, can you tell me where is the position of this f of pi and f of pi plus 1? As the function is defined from S to Rm, may I say f of pi plus 1 and f of pi both belongs to Rm? Both belongs to Rm. Therefore, what about their subtraction? Whether it belongs to Rm or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct, na? As it belongs to Rn and we are writing the statement is true for every vector A in Rm. Now what I will do, I will select the vector as the bracket itself. I will select the vector as bracket f of pi into f of okay. Before that, what I will do, this is for all I, na? Before that, for every vector A and I equals to 1 to r minus 1, no? Because I cannot take r. Because if we take r, this point pi plus 1 will generate a point r plus 1. But we have counted the points till pr only. Therefore, the values of I running from 1 to r minus 1. Now, what we will do? We will substitute the values of I equals to 1 to r minus 1 and we will add up all the inequalities. What will be the effect on the inequalities then? On the equation then? Not inequalities, on the equation. If I just substitute I equals to 1, what is my first term? Is it f of p2 minus f of p1? Okay, this pink line should not be included in the statement. Then adding for I equals to 2, is it f of p3 minus f of p2? And this way we have to continue up to a f of pr minus f of pr minus 1. Correct, na? And right side is equals to 0. Taking a common, what the terms left with us? This f of p2 will cancel with this. Okay. This f of p3 will cancel with the next term. Is it okay? This pr minus 1 will cancel with its previous. We will remain only with f of pr, this term, and the first terms in a first bracket, that is f of p1. Is it okay? But what is f of pr? F of pr is nothing but f of y minus f of x. Correct, no? And is 0 because we have selected p1 to be x and pr to be y. Okay. Now, again, this vector is in Rm. This is also in Rm, and we are writing this for all A in Rm. Therefore, what I am going to take, I am going to select the vector A as this bracket itself, that is fy minus fx. What will happen then? It will be a dot product of A with A. Therefore, it will give us the, yes, what's the value it is going to give us? A0, A dot A is 0, no? If I select a as fy minus fx here, a dot a is 0 will give us a is equals to 0, and which proves in turn fy is equal to fx for all x, y in the domain. Therefore, if you take any 2 points in the domain, the corresponding function value is same. The corresponding function value is same. Then what is the meaning of this statement? Though we take any 2 points in the domain, function values are equal. Therefore, may I say the function f is constant. The function f is constant on S. Okay, is the step clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Or if you have the
Yes, ma'am.
difficulty, you can ask. A very simple concept was used actually. Na? In order to prove f to be constant, provided the derivative is 0 at every point of the domain, we have written open connected is polygonally connected. Therefore, for an arbitrary point x, y in S, we have written this to be a polygonal arc. We have marked some points P1 to PR on the arc, and just we have made use of the mean value theorem. Once we use mean value theorem, the proof of this statement is very easy. I hope there is no difficulty in this. If not, let us move towards the next point. As we have studied already in the total derivative definition, the Taylor's formula we have studied. Now, what is the Taylor's series? Okay, instead of formula, I'll write series itself. What is the Taylor series we have written? F of x is equal to f of c plus f dash of c into x minus c plus f double dash of c into x minus c bracket square upon 2 factorial and so on. 2 factorial and so on. That is, this Taylor series will help us in giving the value of a function near to a point C. But this approximation gives us the most correct value only if x minus c is very small. Okay, or the same can be written in other words as f of b is equal to f of a plus f dash of a into b minus a. Just a representation is different, the meaning is same. Double dash of a b minus a bracket square upon 2 factorial and so on. Here also, whatever is approximation we are calculating for the given function at point B, it depends totally on the values of a function at A, derivative value at A, and second derivative value at A. Also, the difference between B minus, difference between B and A. Okay, whenever this difference is very, very small, we can neglect the higher terms. Correct, no? We were writing like this only, na? If x minus c is very, very small, we just neglect the higher terms of x minus c or b minus a, so that we will get the approximate value of the given function at the point near to c. Okay, but whatever it is, this is finally an approximation. Okay, also we have written f of x is equal to with a linear polynomial, no? Just give me a minute. What we have written also, if f is differentiable function, if f is differentiable at c, then f is approximated. Correct, na? We can find out the value of f approximated a linear function near C. And how can we approximate this? We can just neglect the higher orders, no? We can neglect these higher orders of x minus c and onwards, and we can write simply it as f of x is equal to f of c plus f dash of c into x minus c. Okay, this is an approximate value of the function. Okay, and this is approximation, and is this approximation is correct if this approximation is correct if x minus c is small. If x minus c is small, right? Now, if x minus c is not small, can we neglect the higher orders of x minus c? Suppose x minus c takes a value 2. Then what about the higher powers of 2? 2, 2 square, 2 cube, 2 raised to 4. Whether these values are being neglected? No, we cannot neglect
No,
this.
ma'am.
Therefore, this, whatever is this approximation we were, yes, we cannot neglect. But whatever is the approximation we were writing, this is true only if the difference x minus c is small, otherwise not. And though it is x minus, though this difference x minus c is small, but still we can call this as an approximate value. We cannot say it as a actual value of the function. Correct? No? But now what this Taylor has given? Taylor has given a theorem which gives us the actual value of the function instead of the approximation. Let me write Taylor's theorem. He has given Taylor's theorem actually. Taylor's theorem gives a useful expression for error made by this approximation. Okay, now let me write what is the Taylor's theorem. Now we were writing the Taylor's theorem for the functions of R to R type. Later we will extend it. We will have a generalization for the function of Rn to Rm type. So let me write what is the Taylor's theorem statement. Okay, the Taylor's theorem statement says that let f be, no doubt we were going to consider this without proof. Let f be a function having finite nth derivative f n everywhere in an open interval, AB. Assume that fn minus 1 is continuous on closed interval AB and C belongs to closed interval AB, then prove that for every x in AB, x not equals to C, there exists a point x1 anterior to the interval joining x and C, such that, what such that? Let me write the main statement. The main statement says that f of x is equal to f of C plus summation k equals to 1 to n minus 1 f k at the point C into x minus C bracket raised to k upon k factorial added with fn at the point x1 divided by fn into x1 into x minus C raised to n upon n factorial. Now just look at the change. What is the change we have made? Instead of the series, now it was written as a expression, and this expression is valid till n plus 1 terms only, that is nth derivative of this. right? Therefore, instead of getting an approximate value of the function near to C, we will get an actual value. Okay. Therefore, if we observe all the n derivatives of the given function are given here, the condition is given all n derivatives exist and fn minus 1 is continuous. Why fn minus 1 is need to be continuous? Because if it is continuous, then only it is differentiable. Then on AB, then we got to prove that there for every point x in AB, x not equals to C, there exists a point x1 interior to the interval joining x and C. Let me show you how this point is going to exist. What is told to us? Suppose this is an interval, closed interval AB domain of the given function. Okay, at point C, we know the values of the function and all its derivatives. Okay, then if I want to find out the value of x, the value of function at the point x near to C, then the theorem gives us an existence of a point x1 interior to the interval joining x and C. That is, the point x1 is going to exist in between the line joining x and C somewhere like this. Okay, and the nth derivative is being calculated at the point x1 and this expression x minus c raised to n upon n factorial as it is. This is what a biggest achievement. Instead of giving a series, an approximation, this theorem helps us to give the actual value of the function at the point x near to C by giving the existence of such a point x1. Now we were going to understand what is the Taylor's formula for the functions of multivariable. But before going to this, we will try to understand one notation, because as you observe here, we are going for nth derivative. But in case of total derivative or directional derivative, we have not seen what is the higher order derivative. Therefore, let me just try to tell you what is the notation for these higher derivatives. Okay. Now here we were considering the Taylor's formula. We were going to prove the Taylor's formula for the function of Rn to R type. Then what is the nature of the derivative? Is it a gradient vector? Correct, na?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
nature of the derivative is gradient vector. Therefore, we will start with a gradient vector and we will try to understand how this is going to give us the higher order directional derivatives. Okay. Let me just check. Okay. Now what here I will write? I will just write a notation. Okay. What is the symbol for the directional derivative we were using? Suppose a directional derivative of the function calculated at point x in the direction t. Then this is the first order directional derivative. Then we will continue the symbol as f double dash of xt. Let me write one more, f triple dash of x comma t dot up to f m, that is mth derivative at the point x to t. Okay, these symbols will give the higher order directional derivatives. These symbols gives higher order directional derivative. Okay, where x is a point in Rn and t is also point in Rn. At the point x in the direction t we were writing. Okay, let me just start again. That is, for a function f of Rn to for the function of the type Rn to R. For the function of Rn to R. What I will do, I will write the expression for the first order directional derivative. Okay. Let f be Rn to R, f of x comma t be the directional derivative of f at point x in Rn and in the direction t in Rn. Is the point clear? And as it is a real valued function, how we were writing this? Is it del fx dot t? Correct na? We have seen the
Yes, ma'am.
examples also. This is del fx dot t. Now we will just try to elaborate this notation. Okay. What I am going to write? I am going to write the expression for del fx. What is del fx? Is it d1 fx, d2 fx, all partial derivatives of f, no? Up to dn fx. Now t is the point we were considering in Rn. Therefore, can I write it as an n-tuple vector? Say t1, t2 up to tn. Then what is the dot product of the two? d1 fx dot t1 plus d2 fx dot t2. And let me continue this for the last coordinate, dn fx dot tn. Okay. Can I write it in this summation for as summation j equals to 1 to n dj fx dot tj. Let me call it as statement number 1. That is a first order directional derivative we were going to write in this for summation dj fx dot tj. Now we want to go for one more derivative of this same, that is second order directional derivative. Okay. So let me write to find second order directional derivative. What I will do in order to find out the second order directional derivative, I will assume this as a new function g, say. I will assume this as g and I will find out the derivative of g. Okay. Let f dash of x comma t, let it be g. Okay. Then we will find out g of xt. What will be g of xt then? Is it f double dash of x comma t? Yes or no? First order
Yes,
derivative
ma'am.
of g will be the second order derivative of f. And again, may I write it with the similar notation of del gx dot t?
Yes,
As
ma'am.
we have written del fx dot t, we will write del gx dot t. If you are having a trouble, you can stop me and ask anything. Okay. This is del gx dot t. Okay. So let me write here. What is g derivative? Is it del fx dot t? Again a dot product with t. G is f dash of xt is equal to del fx dot t. Correct, no? Now we will try to find out what is del fx dot t. Okay. What is del fx dot t? Whatever is this function, we will find out the first partial derivative, second partial derivative, and so on. Therefore, may I write d1 del fx dot t comma d2 del fx dot t till tn del fx dot t, and a dot product is taken with t vector, which I can write as t1 to tn. Is the point clear? Let me call this as statement number 2. And this is nothing but f double dash of x comma t. Now, in order to find out this expression, I will take one expression for this from this coordinate. That is one coordinate I will take. Okay. Let us take ith coordinate. Let us take ith coordinate and we will simplify. Let us take ith coordinate of del fx dot t. Yes, what is the ith coordinate? Is it di del fx dot t? Correct, no? Here, this is first, this is second. Therefore, in general, it will be ith one di del fx dot t. Okay. What is del fx dot we have obtained? This is summation dj fx dot tj. Correct, na? And j running from 1 to n. Is it okay? This is from statement 1, na? f dash of x is summation j dj of x dot tj. Here I have written. Here let me write. This is from 1. Okay. Now, what is the partial derivative of this? We know partial derivative is a linear function. Therefore, let me operate this on the, let me take summation outside and I can operate this on the summation value. Let me write, so this is summation j equals to 1 to n di of dj of x dot tj. Okay, once the partial derivative with respect to I, once the partial derivative with respect to j. Therefore, may I write it as with the symbol dij fx dot tj. This symbol is very similar to a symbol we were using as fxy, no? Fxy. What is the meaning? First, a partial derivative taken with respect to x, then it is taken with respect to y. Whether these two values are equal?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
When these two are equal is the question actually. These are equal, but provided these two are the continuous function. It is not for all in general. Okay, this is not true in general. It is true for only for the functions if the functions are continuous. Okay. Here what we have started with di summation del fx dot t. So let me put this value 3 in 2. What is 2? This is 2, na? Let me put this value here in 2. This is actually a dot product, right? What the dot product it is? Shall I write it here only? This is summation over I equals to 1 to n di del fx dot t into ti. Correct, no? Here only I have written this. This is summation I equals to 1 to n di del fx dot t dot t. Now I am going to put the value of di del fx dot. Okay, put this value into. What this 2 becomes? F double dash of x comma t. Let me write the value again. This is summation I equals to 1 to n di del fx dot t dot ti. Okay, and what is the value we have found? Di. Let me put it here. This is summation I equals to 1 to n. Di value is summation j equals to 1 to n d of I comma j f of x dot tj dot ti dot tj dot ti, and this is the expression for your second order directional derivative f double dash of x in the direction t. Now I am going to write similarly for the third order derivative. Similarly, what will be the third order derivative? Can anyone guess? No doubt we have to use one more summation. Therefore, this is triple summation. Okay. What will be a summation? No doubt I equals to 1 to n, j equals to 1 to n, k equals to 1 to n. One more derivative will be involved, d of I comma j comma k of fx. Okay. Then this is tk dot tj dot ti. Just I have written similarly instead of writing the whole expression again. This is similarly. Okay, this is what about the notations. Any problem with the notations? That is for first order derivative. For first order directional derivative, we were going to use the symbol by equation number 1. Okay. This is equation number 1, an expression for first order directional derivative. Okay, and this is an expression for second order directional derivative, and let this be the expression for the third order directional derivative. Now, as we have seen the notations for the higher order directional derivatives, now we are ready to understand what is the Taylor's theorem for multivariable function. Any difficulty till this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Let me just go for a Taylor's theorem. And this Taylor's theorem is actually the last theorem of unit number 3. Last theorem of unit number 3. Today we will anyhow finish. It will take 5-10 minutes more, but we will try to finish this. Okay. Let me write statement of Taylor's formula or Taylor's theorem. What kind of function is under the consideration? S to R. S is the subset of Rn. That is multivariable real valued function. Let me see the statement. The statement says that assume that f and all its partial derivative of order less than m are differentiable at each point of an open set in Rn. Open set in Rn. If A and B are 2 points, A and B are the 2 points of set S such that line joining the 2 points AB is contained in S, they'll prove that there is a point Z on the line segment L of AB such that FB minus FA or FB equals to f of A plus summation k equals to 1 to n kth directional derivative at point A in the direction B minus A into 1 upon k factorial plus 1 upon m factorial fm at the point Z in the direction B minus A. This is what a statement of Taylor's theorem for Rn to R type. I will just recall what is the statement we have written for R to R type. What is the statement we have written for R to R type? F of x is equal to f of c summation k equals to 1 to n minus 1 f kc into x minus c bracket raised to k upon k factorial plus fn of x1 divided by n factorial x minus c raised to n, where this x1 is the point joining x1 is the point on the line joining x and c. Okay, this is for the function of the type R to R we have seen. Now we are going to extend the same thing for the function of Rn to R type. If you just look at the statement, both the statement look similar. Okay, only the changes, instead of this ordinary derivatives of kth order, nth order, here we have directional derivative. Okay, now we are ready to prove the theorem. Okay, one more point. Where is the location for Z is given? The location of Z is given on the line segment AB. That is, if A and B are the 2 points in the domain, the line joining the 2 points is also in the same set. On these line segment, we will find a point Z1. Very similar to this previous expression. As x1 is the point we are finding on the line segment joining x and c. Likewise, the point Z will be on the line segment joining the points A and B. Okay, let us try to give the proof of the statement. No doubt, the proof of Taylor's theorem for R to R type function will be an assumption, and we were going to prove it for the functions of multivariate. Okay, how many things are given to us? Let us check again. f is having a partial derivatives of order less than m and are differentiable. If partial derivative of order less than m exists and it is differentiable, what does it mean? We will get the partial derivatives of order m. Correct, no? Up to m minus 1 partial derivatives exist and those are also differentiable. Means partial derivatives of order m could be possible. Okay, and it is defined at each point of the open set of the domain. And if a and b are the any 2 points of the set, yes, line joining the 2 points is in the same set, and hence we want to prove this statement. Okay, let us draw one sketch here. Let this be your domain space S contained in Rn. What is given? A and B are the 2 points where line joining the 2 points is in the same set. Now, what we will do, as the set S is given to be an open set. Correct, na? Each point of an open set. Here we will assume the domain is an open set. Therefore, if I take A to be a point, this must be an interior point, and there exists a small neighborhood around the point A which will be contained in S. Okay, here let me write, since S is open subset of Rn and F is defined from Rn to R. F is defined from Rn to R. Now what I am going to do? I am going to no doubt make use of the Taylor's formula. For Taylor's formula, we need the real valued function. What I am going to do is, let me write an arbitrary point on the line segment joining A and B. Okay. So here I am right, there exists delta greater than 0 such that, what such that, what is the equation of line segment joining the 2 points? Bt plus 1 minus Ta, no? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
And this T we were considering from minus delta to 1 plus delta. In the statement of mean value theorem also we have taken the range interval for range for T like this, na, minus delta to 1 plus delta. Why this is to be taken for delta positive?
To include
yes,
0 and 1.
yes, to include 0 and 1. The range is taken like this. This is the line segment Bt plus 1 minus T which belongs to S. This Bt plus 1 minus T A can also be written as A plus T times B minus A. Okay. Check, no, this is A. If I multiply by this A, this is A. Take T common, this is B minus A. For A plus T minus. Now I am going to define a new function G on this range minus delta to 1 plus delta, and so that it will be a one variable function, rather one variable real valued function. Okay, whatever is the function we have in our hand is a function from Rn to R type. Now I am going to define a function of R to R type. Why is this so? Because once I define the function of the type G R to R, then one can use that previous Taylor's theorem statement. Okay, therefore let me define G. Define G on minus delta to 1 plus delta by. See how I am going to define this as G of T is f of T, sorry, f of A plus T times B minus A. This is belonging to S. Belonging to S means no doubt contained in Rn. Therefore, f can be defined on this vector in an Rn space. And what is the resultant of f? What is the nature of R? Domain, codomain side. R real value, no? Therefore, what is this value? Is it real value?
Yes,
Therefore,
ma'am.
G defined on one variable takes a real value. Therefore, what is the nature of G becomes? Is it R to R? Okay. Now, as this function G is becoming a function of one variable real value type, now I am going to use a Taylor's formula, but for the particular values of T as 0 and 1. Let us check why. If I take G of 1, what will be my value? What is the value of if I put t equal to 1 here?
F of A plus B minus A.
A plus B minus A, no? A cancel. Is it f of B only? What about g of 0?
F of A.
G of 0? Yes, this is f of A. And in order to take this g1 and g0 values, we have taken the range of t to be minus delta to 1 plus delta, so that it is going to include 0 and 1. Is it okay? Now g of 1 is f of B, g of 0 is f of A. Now we apply the one-dimensional Taylor's formula. Applying one-dimensional Taylor's theorem or formula, anything you can use. Formula to G we have. What we will have? We were going to use this formula now for one-dimensional case. Here I have written in a red pen. Yes. Now I am going to use it for a function G. Okay. X I am going to take 1 and C I am going to take 0. X I am going to take 1, C I am going to take 0. Okay. Will be a Taylor's formula then. Is it G1 minus G0 is equal to, or G of 0 is equal to summation K equals to 1 to M minus 1 upon K factorial GK0. Actually here in a bracket it is 1 minus 0 raised to K. But 1 minus 0 is 1, therefore it is okay if you write or not going to. Gm theta and 1 minus 0. Therefore here theta is the point assumed between 0 and 1. We have theta between 0 and 1. As we have written x1 between x and c in the original statement. Theta is the statement. Now let me call this to be statement number 2, where theta is in between 0 and 1. Okay. Now what is the job? Just to find out this gk0 and gm theta value and substitute. What we observe, g is a composite function, no? This is actually one function in P and g defined to be f of some function in P. Therefore, this is a composite function. How the derivative could be possible? By chain rule. Correct, no? By g is a composite function. Composite function given by. How I'm going to give this composite function actually? G of pt, I'm going to write as f of p of t, where p of t I'm going to write as a plus t times b minus a. Let me call it as statement number 3. Then what is the kth component of this derivative? Actually, in order to find the higher order derivatives of g, how we find the derivatives? G dash of t is f dash of pt into p dash of t. Correct, na?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Then if I take one more derivative, g double dash t is f double dash pt into p double dash of t. Therefore, we should know what is the higher order derivatives of p of t first. And then we will go for finding the higher order derivatives for the function g. Now, I am interested in writing the derivatives of p. Before that, we will try to write it in terms of its components. What is p of t we have taken? This is a plus t times b minus a. Let us write everything in terms of the n-tuple vectors, because this is a vector in Rn. A I can write as a1 to an. Okay. T is a scalar. How can I write the vector representing b minus a? First coordinate b1 minus a1. Second coordinate b2 minus a2. So on up to last coordinate bn minus an. Correct? Then what is the first coordinate of pt? Is it a1 plus t times b1 minus a1. Second coordinate a2 plus t times b2 minus a2. Okay, continue. What is the last? an plus t times bn minus an. Okay, this is what p of t is. Therefore, what is the kth component of this function?
AK plus T times BK minus AK.
Good. This is, can I write it as some pkt say? Okay, pkt, kth component is ak plus t times bk minus ak. Fine. What is its derivative then? Which implies pk dash t. One variable function. How can I
BK
find the
minus
derivative?
AK.
Yes, it is bk minus ak only, and let me call, I think, number 4. Yes, number 4. Okay, now as we have obtained the derivative of that pt, now we will apply chain rule for finding the higher order derivatives of g. By chain rule, g dash t exist in the interval, I should write. Exist in the interval. Yeah, in which interval we have defined g? Minus delta to 1 plus delta, and is given by. How we are giving this? Let me shift to next page. Let me write it. Whenever h is given to be some function of g, how we are writing h dash of a is f dash of g of a into g dash of a. No, this is a chain rule, right? Now I am going to use the chain rule for g function. G function is defined as f of pt. Now g of t is defined as f of pt. Okay, what is the first derivative? Is it f dash of p of t into p dash of t? But what is f dash of p of t? First derivative, gradient vector, and just now we have seen a symbol is, or the notation is summation j equals to 1 to m. This is a dj f of pt into its component pj dash t. Okay, or here you can write this f dash of pt as d1 f of pt, d2 f of pt, and continue up to dn f of pt. Now what is the derivative with dot product with pt? This is dj f of pt into pj dash t. Okay, but what is pj dash? A component. We have written pk dash just now. What we have written pk dash? bk minus ak. Then what is pj dash?
BJ minus AJ.
Yes, it is dj minus aj. This is dj f of pt into bj minus aj. Okay, and this is nothing but a directional derivative of a function here in the direction pt, sorry, at the point pt in the direction b minus a. Correct? No? Let me go to the notations again. What is this notation says? F dash of a. If it is dj f x dot tj, then this is the directional derivative at x in the direction t. Likewise, now here we have an expression, summation dj f of pt. We have dj f of pt into bj minus aj. If the derivative is at point pt in the direction b minus a, and this is what your first derivative g dash of t. Again by applying a chain rule and continuing. Again by applying chain rule, let us find out the second order derivative. Let me write g double dash of t is obtained at, we will not repeat again. This is summation I from 1 to n, j from 1 to n, d of I comma j f of pt in bj minus aj into bi minus ai, which is nothing but a directional derivative, second order directional derivative of a function at point pt, and in which direction? In b minus a direction. Sorry. Okay. Similarly, what about mth derivative? May I write directly now? The mth derivative of g at point t is mth derivative, mth directional derivative of a function f at the point pt in the direction b minus a. In the direction b minus a. Now what we will do? We will substitute all the values in that statement number 2. What is statement number 2? This is a statement number 2 Taylor's formula for the function of one variable real value, where we will put gk0 and gm theta. What is gk0 value? Equal to 0 I have to put now. Putting these values into. Putting these values into, let me write this as g1 minus g0 is equal to summation k equals to 1 to m minus 1, 1 upon k factorial. Okay, what is the kth? gk0 is a term, na? Therefore, may I write this is f k, t equal to 0 I have to write, therefore this is p of 0, b minus a added with, what is the second term? 1 upon m factorial, gm theta it is. So this is fm, t, let me substitute theta in the direction b of a. Okay. Why we have written this? By putting t equal to 0 and t equals to theta in first and second term. Okay, now just last step remains. What is the value of P0 and P theta? What is P0? Pt is a plus t times b minus a, no? A plus t times b minus a. Therefore, what is P0? A?
Yes,
P
ma'am.
theta? P theta is a plus theta times b minus a, right? Just substitute the value here. This is g1 minus g0 is equal to summation k equals to 1 to m minus 1, 1 upon k factorial f of k. Now I am going to substitute p of 0 as a in the direction b minus a plus 1 upon m factorial, mth derivative of f, and I am going to substitute t as theta now, a plus theta times b minus a in the direction b minus a. Okay, now what is a plus theta times b minus a? This is one point on the line segment joining a to b, no? A plus theta times b minus a is one point on the line segment joining a to b. Let me write it as z, and which is the point on the line segment. Let z is equal to a plus theta times b minus a belongs to a line segment AB. So let us just replace the value. What about the left hand side? G1 minus G0. Initially we have seen that G1 is f of b and G0 is f of a. Just write what is the right hand side. Right hand side is summation k equals to 1 to m minus 1 upon k factorial f k into a comma b of a. Yes, is someone want to speak? Is it okay? And here the reason is from 1 and hence the proof. Any difficulty in today's lecture? Actually, it is somewhat difficult to understand in one learning, one sitting. You just make the revision of this proof. Surely you will get the proof of this statement. Okay. If you feel any kind of difficulty, you just ask me at any stage. We will discuss it again. Okay. Let me just tell you a theme from the starting. At Taylor's theorem, we want to prove a statement like this. Let me take a color change. We want to prove a statement like this. Okay. Therefore, we have started with an open subset. As it is an open subset, we are going to have A to be an integer point so that the line segment joining the 2 point is given in the same set. We have defined a new function g, which is a one variable real valued function. We have defined with the help of a given multivariable real valued function so that g1 and g0 becomes fb and fa, and we are ready to use the Taylor's formula. The only job is to find out the kth derivative and mth derivative, that is derivatives up to mth order for the function of g. But as we can write g to be a composite function, we can find out the derivative by chain rule. Here all these descriptions we have written. First derivative we have obtained in this form. That is, first derivative of g is first directional derivative of f at the point pt in the direction b. Second derivative of g is the second directional derivative of f at point pt in the direction b minus a, and continue. Just we have put the values, and here next step we have found the value of p0 and p theta. P0 is a, p theta is this point. This is p0, this is p theta. But this is nothing but one point on the line segment joining A and B. Let me call this as some z, and let us just replace the value. Hence, this is an existence of a point z on the line segment joining A to B, and hence the proof of Taylor's theorem. You just give the repetition, just give the revision to the proof. You will surely understand. With this, we have completed the third unit of real analysis 1. Now, only one unit is left. The last unit is implicit function and extremum problem. It's a very small unit. We can cover this in 8 to 10 lectures. Thank you for being with me for today. If you have any problems, you can ask me. No difficulty? Shall we stop then? Shall we stop then? If you are not having
Yes,
any kind of difficulty. Okay, just give a revision to the proof. Okay, you will surely understand the proof. Thank you.